welcome Hearn and Bellew, Talk the Talk. It's been a while. Obviously, now the excitement around the return of this series, Tony, unbelievable. Welcome back, looking well, looking trim.
Trying.
Big night for you, really. I mean, obviously not fighting, but a couple of friends on the card. Just saw you with Natasha Jonas there. Just saw you with Derek Chisora. Can we just keep it a little bit more quiet, please, this time, behind closed doors? Because you did kind of lose your rag last time. Actually, last time against Usyk, I had you on one side, David Hay on the other side.
Lucky you.
And the bell went for the final, you know, on the 12th round, and I thought Daryl had won. Because I was listening to you two. When I watched it back, I thought he lost by 3 rounds. But
when you've got me and David there at the side, you know, you usually make millions. So,
that's
you know,
true.
You should have been happy.
I know. I didn't that night, so I was actually...
We weren't punching each other, but, you know...
Number 3?
Never say never, mate, you know. The money's right, you know.
No, stop
Everyone's
it.
got a
Stop
place.
it. Big card, of course, you know, we talked Chisora Parker, we got Jonas against Taylor, which everybody's talking about as well. Eubank against Morrison, Dmitry Bivol against Craig Richards, James Tennyson, return of Scott Fitzgerald. Let's focus on the main event with Chisora Parker quickly. I know you're always worried for Dell because you worry for all your mates who go in there and fight, and he's had that sort of Indian summer, he's come through now. When you actually break it down, I mean, did really well against Usyk, didn't he? I mean, it was a close fight. He lost the fight, but he pushed him. And, you know, he came out like a raging bull in the early part of that fight. Do you again, you know, Parker, bigger than Usyk, punches harder than Usyk. Didn't look $1 million last time out as well. I guess this fight's really about who's got what left, isn't it, in many ways? I mean, we know what Dell's going to do, but the longer this fight goes, the more chance you give Derek Chisora. Is that how you feel about this fight?
I do. I think, you know, he's got to be wary early doors against someone like, you know, him, against Parker. But for me, when you look at the actual dimensions of Joseph Parker, he's actually smaller than Alexander Usyk. He carries more power. Yes, he's an old, you know, he's a career-long heavyweight. But ultimately, his dimensions are smaller, so it allows Derek to get closer and get on his chest easier, in my opinion. Someone like Usyk is much more slicker on the feet. You know, he's more rangy. His style of punching is much harder to get around. With someone like Joseph Parker, you know what he's doing. He's coming at you with a 1-2 and a left hook. It's as simple as that.
Does he move in this fight? Does he stay on his bike? I mean, great additions to both teams, by the way. Andy Lee with Joseph Parker and Buddy McGirt, fantastic trainer and minding with Derek Chisora. Andy Lee, box puncher, you know, does he mix it up or does he just stay on the outside out of trouble? That's a hard thing to do, isn't it, against Derek Chisora? You saw Usyk was all over the place for the first 2 or 3 rounds in that fight because he just literally does not stop.
I think he was just thrown off by the sheer weight and the velocity of Derek Chisora, you know, coming at him non-stop. It took him by surprise. With Joseph Parker, that's not going to take him by surprise. You've got to remember who he's been in the ring with. He's been in there with someone like Andy Ruiz, a big, heavy, strong man. So them kind of things won't offset him. I think the biggest challenge in this fight for me on Derek's side is, can Joseph Parker hurt Derek Chisora? If he can hurt him, then, you know, it's a really bad fight for Derek Chisora. If Derek can get through the first couple of rounds and see them through, I think this fight turns into an absolute barn burner. I really do, because Derek will get on his chest, and Joseph is going to have to meet fire with fire. He really is. Andy Lee is a great addition to the team. He's been part of the greatest boxing camp in the history of boxing. You know, the late great Emmanuel Stewart. He's learnt off someone like him. He's been around Adam Booth. He's been around the block. He really has. And if he can just take that little bit that he's learnt and put it into Joseph Parker's game, it's a great addition. Now Buddy McGirt in Derek Chisora's camp.
Does Dell listen?
Knowledgeable.
I mean, you know, like, you're close with Derek Chisora. What's the ambition for him? I mean, we were talking about Joseph Parker saying, if I win this fight, I can get myself back in a position to fight for the World Heavyweight title. With Dell, I mean, it's tough to realise what is the burning desire with Derek Chisora, because he keeps coming back for these fights. He's always entertaining. He's a fantastic heavyweight, but he's not really trying to position himself for a world title. Does he just love to fight? And does he listen to someone like Buddy? I mean, I know he has massive respect for him, but when the bell goes, you know, is Buddy McGirt really going to have a major role to play in the corner?
You've just took the words out of my mouth. You know, why does he do it? And you also answered the question as well, because he loves it. It's as simple as that, Ed, to be honest. He loves fighting. And the big thing about Derek is he wants to be an exciting fight. He doesn't want to just get in the ring and you know, get a payday and run off into the sunset. He wants to actually get in and make everyone happy. He wants to be in a war. He wants to get punched in the face. He wants to do as much damage as he possibly can. So he's got it all to do against Joseph Parker. A little bit younger, a little bit, I wouldn't say fresher, but, you know, just that little bit less worn, I think Joseph Parker is, of the two. But ultimately, I don't think he's been in as many hard fights as Derek Chisora, and he doesn't. Does he still want to do it? You know, when this fight gets hard, is he gonna back down?
Do you think people underestimate how hard it is in there with Derek Chisora? Because, you know, I think from the outset you might say he's getting old. You're like, you know, you got to just hurt him. But everyone he seems to get in there with, doesn't matter if it's Usyk, you know, I'm sure Parker tomorrow night, Dillian White, you know.
David A.
Yeah, just turns into wars basically every time and turns into an horrible night's work.
He on the eye, he's not appealing on the eye, and he looks really easy to beat. I've sparred dozens and dozens or hundreds of rounds with Derek Chisora over the years. As I say, when you watch him from afar, he looks really easy to hit, he looks really easy to beat. But what doesn't show there is what doesn't stop coming and what doesn't give up is actually very hard to beat. And that's what it's purely down to. As hard as desire and as determination, he won't stop. You have to literally put this man on the floor to stop him. If you can't do that, you're in for a long, hard night. The fight will be exciting.
Just saw you then talking to Natasha Jonas, of course, big night for Liverpool, big night for...
Huge.
And obviously Katie Taylor, who has just been incredible, you know, from the amateur code in the professional world. Saw Joe Gallagher there. Joe, as he does, you know, he falls in love with his fighters. I've never seen him so confident about a win. You know, with your, and it can't be a neutral hat on because of your friendship with Natasha, but how do you see this fight? You see Katie Taylor as a strong favourite in this fight. I know you think Natasha can do it, but if you can keep as neutral as possible, does your head say?
Of course, I want her to do it. Of course, I'm urging and willing her to do it. But when you look at the mammoth task in front of it, it's huge. You know, Katie Taylor is the greatest female boxer that I've ever seen. Weighed in offense and defense, she's absolutely fantastic. Her only weakness that we've seen was against Delphine Persoon was she struggles once someone's in her face and is not going away. If Natasha Jonas can implement...
Is that what she has to do? Is that I mean, Katie is so sharp also, you know, but that's what Natasha has to do. But she has to be aggressive in this fight.
We've seen it that the only way to get no one's going to beat Katie Taylor in a straight-up boxing match. I'm sorry, but you know, no one's going to outbox her. The only way to beat Katie Taylor is the Delphine Persoon blueprint. Delphine Persoon came very close in New York. Very, very close. I don't think she beat her. A lot of other people did, but I thought the better work came from Katie Taylor. If Natasha Jonas can implement that same strategy that Delphine Persoon pursued, she has better quality punches than Persoon. So it's going to add better to the actual game plan. I think she'll do it if she can implement that game plan. You can't outbox Katie Taylor, I'm sorry. It's very, very hard to do. But as I said, Natasha has a better shot selection than Persoon. She hits harder than Persoon.
She's punching very hard.
She hits. I actually think Natasha Jonas is the hardest puncher Katie Taylor's ever faced in her career. I think that goes without saying.
The amateur rivalry irrelevant? I mean, it was eight years ago.
Completely, yeah. It's 4-2s. Or 3-2s, was it? I don't know, but completely irrelevant. Makes absolutely no comparison to this fight. Two completely different athletes, two completely different fighters in a completely different game. Amateur boxing and professional boxing are so far apart. It's like saying that rugby and football are both the same because they're played with the ball. That's the kind of divide between both sports, amateur and professional boxing. One is a brutal business. The other is a tactical sport.
One fight I can't wait for, and you know, just a massive chance for a British fighter, but also a mountain to climb. Craig Richards against Dmitry Bivol. I mean, you know, I remember Peter Sims coming in the office. He just dismantled Shakan Pitters in a great fight to win the British title. Didn't think he, you know, would perform like that.
He had that in him.
And Peter said, "Look, I just feel like we want to take the chance. You know, he's in his prime. He's full of confidence.
Roll the dice."
And I said, "Well, we represent Dmitry Bivol, Pete, but you know, this kid's special." And he said, "We've looked at Bivol. You know, we fancied a fight." And I said, "Well, you know, Pete," I said, "if he loses, he can come back and defend the British title." He said, he won't lose. He'll win this fight." And I said, "Okay, well, you got the opportunity." Yeah. When you break it down again, we talk about Joe Gallagher falling in love with his fighters. When you're part of a team, you start looking at things that might work in Craig Richards' favours. Like, Bivol's been out for a year and a half, right? Bivol's coming to the UK. But we also can't ignore Bivol is very special.
Peter Sims, if this was, you know, first, I'll touch on Peter Sims, a very good coach, a very knowledgeable coach from a very knowledgeable boxing family. So he knows the game inside and out. He won't have gone into this fight with his eyes closed. He's gone into this fight with his eyes wide open. He'll know the dangers that Dmitry Bivol possesses. What he's going to have to look at is, can Richards gain a little bit of momentum by getting through the first couple of rounds and then, you know, making it awkward? I think that's the only way in this fight for him. He's got to make it awkward early doors. quite literally. And then from there, try and see if he can frustrate Bivol, see if he can make him miss and make him pay. At no point in this fight can he get into a fight with Dmitry Bivol. If you get into a fight with this kid, he's going to cop you and you're going to go. He can punch, he can box, technically very good. The only thing that I've watched in his style is that he starts slow and he's technically very, very good. But being technically very, very good means he needs time and space to think about what he's going to do. If Richards gives him that, he's going to get picked apart.
Being around Bivol, like, lovely guy, right? Lovely guy. I mean, I don't know him well enough to tell you how confident he is, but it's not like he struts and you look at this guy and think,
yeah.
I think a little bit nervous and probably nervous through...
Edgy, not nervous, edgy.
Edgy, but also, you know, when you talk, been frustrated through lockdown, you know, COVID, hasn't been able to fight. Last box in October 2019.
It's a long time.
You know, comes over here, doesn't really know a lot about Craig Richards, wants to fight Beterbiev, wants the legacy fights, ends up being out for a year and a half and coming to Manchester behind closed doors in a fight that everybody expects him to win.
Yeah.
We see that behind closed doors environments, thrown up some... Now, again, maybe I'm just talking myself
He's
into
experienced it, though, because you have to remember, and you always have to take into context with these great amateur guys, these in-house environments and the pressure of it all, they're used to it, Ed, because when you go to multi-nations for your country, it's exactly like this. It's even more intense, if anything, because you guys have got security around, you guys have got, you know, people from the media around, so nothing can really go wrong. When you go to amateur tournaments and you'll see the #1 Russian who you're going to be facing, you're like, I'm not backing down here. He's standing on, I'm standing on. And it gets a little bit edgy, and you're thinking, here, everything's controlled. It's a really nice atmosphere that he's built up and got around. So I think Bivol won't be intimidated and he won't feel unease in this environment. But ultimately, it'll only show when he gets in the ring. If Richards can make it awkward for him and then make him start questioning himself after them first 2 or 3 rounds, he could be in for a long, hard night. But if he goes out there and thinks that he can have a fight in any way, shape or form with Dmitry Bivol, he's going to come off second best.
Well, someone else got a mountain to climb against someone else who's had huge inactivities, Marcus Morrison, against Chris Eubank Jr. Really interested to see Chris Eubank Jr.'s interview the other day where, you know, I think sometimes, I don't mind saying it, but he could come across a little bit unlikable, you know, a little bit arrogant, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I really enjoyed the way he spoke, you know, talk about the mistakes he's made, talk about how he felt he could always train himself, realised that he had to bring in, of course, the legend Roy Jones Jr., but also didn't seem as edgy and with that chip on his shoulder and as aggressive. And I wonder whether, you know, my question to him at the press conference yesterday was, do you still want it? Like, you know, he's made a lot of money. He went in the World Boxing Super Series. Yeah, he boxed James DeGale on pay-per-view. He went to work with Al Heyman and made probably a $7-figure check. Yeah. So, you know, and Marcus Morrison, absolutely nothing to lose. Sharp puncher. Actually, a decent fighter, but had some bad defeat, came back with a good win in Italy. But I guess this is more about Chris Eubank Jr. and the position he's in than Marcus Morrison.
It is. I actually commented through my social media about Chris Eubank Jr. and I put, it's refreshing just to see him talk. I've seen him a couple of times this week, and I don't usually watch the interviews and stuff, but I clicked on something that he was on, and I listened to him speak for about 2 or 3 minutes long, and it was just refreshing to hear the kid talk. There was no bullshit around, there was no nonsense. It was just him talking about his past, his future, his present, and linking up with the legend Roy Jones Jr. And I was like, do you know what? He's coming across all right. Yeah, good on him. And because I've always thought, you know, arrogance and this and that about him, but he come across really well. So I think linking up with someone like Roy Jones Jr. cannot be anything but a positive thing.
Is it too late though? Like, I mean, you got to remember this guy came through the system, no system, came through watching his dad, came through messing around, having a few street fights and limited amateur experience, went to America and did it all himself. Got to a period, like he fought for the world title, really, with, I mean, no disrespect to Ronnie Davis, but with no trainer, really.
Yeah, he's trained himself.
But can you, is it too late at that point to team up with Roy Jones Jr. at 30 years old and just...
It's not too late, purely because the kid's an unbelievable athlete. And that's the most important thing. If you're talking about a slob and you're trying to get fucking Johnny Vegas into shape and said, has he come along too late? Then yeah, he has. But this kid is a phenomenal athlete. You look at him, he's a specimen. And if he can absorb and learn these things, because he's done really well to get to where he's got in the time that he's got there. No one can say anything about his desire and his determination to get there. This kid's come from, you know, I don't want to say silver spoon, but a good background, you know. But he's also dealt with tough times, and and stuff like that. So he's gone to America, he's learned his trade there, he's come back over here, he's done a little bit here, and now he's got someone like Roy Jones Jr. in. If even 1% could rub off on him, believe you me, it's going to make a massive difference. It's his mentality for me. That's
as an ex-fighter, I mean, I know you met Roy Jones before, but it shocked me the British boxing legends and the world champions, former world champions as well, that we've had here this week, who just the knees go weak at Roy Jones Jr.
He's the greatest fighter that's ever lived. Yeah. I don't care what anyone says. I've studied boxing since I was 12 years old. I've watched everyone. The greats, the legends, he is the greatest fighter that has ever put on gloves. You cannot compare him to any. If he retires after he beats John Ruiz, no one even questions that he's the greatest fighter ever. It's just the fact of his prolonged legacy of going on further after the Tarver fight that he carries on. That's the only thing that damages his legacy. He's the best fighter I've ever seen, the most equal in offense and defense I've ever seen. He had one-punch power. His footwork was unbelievable. This guy played a semi-professional basketball match and then defended his world title against the #1 contender, Eric Lucas, in the same day. Just put that in. He basically played the professional basketball match in the afternoon and then went and defended his world title in the night. What kind of nonsense is that?
Do you know the first time I ever heard the name Roy Jones Jr. was when I was probably about, I want to say maybe 13, 14, something like that. And his name come up. I heard my dad say his name on a phone call about fighting Chris Eubank Jr., Chris Eubank Senior.
They weren't going
of course. It was a very quick conversation.
Of course.
Eubank didn't really. I think he knew better. And around that era, he was unbeatable.
Mate, I can't explain enough how good he was. I mean, we had our own little quartet of them over here: Steve Collins, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank.
Another level.
Another stratosphere. There's levels, and then there's just a freak. He's a freak. What he done to the likes of the James Tonys and Bernard Hopkins before him was just, he beat them with ease. He didn't even get out of second gear, and then he goes through the weights. You know, he unifies the light heavyweight division. He unifies the middle. He was just, Ed, he was phenomenal. He's amazing. When I first met him, I was like, I can't believe he knows who I am. I just cannot believe this. Every time
if it wasn't for Creed, he would never have known who you were.
Yeah, possibly, mate. Yeah. But, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I heard that he watched Chilemba 1. And he said that was one of the best fights I've ever seen.
It just happens every time he gets on. He has to bring that up. And we shall remember what Sky said after I think, it was Cleverly 2, wasn't Chilemba 1. They were annoyed with Cleverly 1, but they absolutely despised me after Cleverly 2. Yeah. The words were, Bellew will never be on box office again.
Turned out all right. That changed, didn't it?
Bellew only done like 2 million sales after that, you know, but... You know, that's all he done. Just 2 million sales for them. Made them a right few quid. And the man next to me as well. But, you know, as it goes. Yeah.
Anyway, back to the card.
Back to the original.
Yeah. We got a couple of others to talk about. Scott Fitzgerald, great to see him back. Yeah. James Tennyson. You know, for people listening to this show, this is a really tough fight. I know you don't know too much about Straffon, but basically of the same mould of Maurizio Lara. You know, couple of defeats, super tough Mexican. I don't want to. You know, just in case I'm wrong in this.
Don't put the thing goes on it again.
No, I know, but I got no. You know why? Because I got a text. I got the same text. From Maurizio Lara. Someone said, "Listen, I'm not saying this kid is a world beater, but I'm telling you now, he's coming to fight and he's tough." And I got the same text yesterday about Straffon. With the Mexicans, and Mark Dunlop chose him, so I'm okay. But he just said the same thing. He said, "Look, he's not. This kid's not going to go out and win the lightweight. You know." Unify the divisions, but apparently, and just in case I'm wrong, I apologise on this, we may cut it out if I find out it's wrong. This kid comes from the toughest of places. I had the story that at 6 years old, he was an alcoholic on the streets in Mexico, Straffon.
At 6?
Right, yeah. And
I'm not having this.
Okay.
Fuck off.
No.
Fuck off.
But by the way,
6.
Just in case that's not true, can we just pretend it is? Because it's a great story, I think. You know, it's a great story for the fight.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a really good story.
But one thing I will say is, it's tough out there. I mean, you know... Seriously.
Maybe kids...
I know, but listen, we may edit that out if it's not true. We'll get confirmation. But one thing you know is they... True or not, they have it rough out there, right?
Mate, no one's got it harder than a 6-year-old alcoholic. No one, I'm promising you. Do you know what?
And Tennyson, never in a dull fight.
No, he's not. Tennyson can really fight, mate. He's so exciting. I love watching him. As soon as you said Lara, I'm like, oh, no, not again, because I remember speaking to you before the fight and you going, Tone, this Lara can fight, you know. And I was like, hey, don't be daft. You say this all the time.
I do say that all the time. Because I get nervous and I start talking other people up, and I do it every day for a living.
And I was like, He did tell me, he did say it, and I was like...
Do you think for Tennyson, like, everyone talks about his power. I mean, what Josh Warrington did in that fight was he had no regard or respect for Mauricio Lara.
And he
thought I could come over there and get rid of him in 3 rounds.
Very similar to Ruiz and Joshua. You go in there with that mentality, that's your biggest enemy. Your mentality is what hurts you in a fight like that. If he goes into a fight with him again and people will go, well, how did he take the punches this time? Because he went in with the mind in thinking, I can be hurt now. I've got to stay away from this. When you go into a fight and think, this guy can't really punch, I'm just going to walk through him. When you do get hit, you can't flip that. It's not something that can be flipped instantly. But, you know, if you go in there thinking this guy can hit me and you get dropped, you can get up because in your mind, you've prepared to
Is that the difference? Because people say, you know, Warrington's going to rematch Lara.
Yeah.
People say, well, he walked through him. He'll walk through him again.
No, I'll bet you he beats him. And I will bet you he does. Okay, he might get hurt in the fight, but I will bet a pound to a penny he just outboxes him for 12 rounds. Just absolutely outbox him. It'll just be, he'll go in and he'll just have a completely different mindset. He'll know this guy can hurt him and he'll approach it completely different. Very similar to AJ and Ruiz. It's what good fighters do, and Josh Warrington
But
is
when
a
you
very
get
good
talked
fighter.
up as a pound-for-pound puncher like James Tennyson, you've got to be careful as you go through the levels, just not to just presume you can bulldoze through everybody else.
I mean, the talk of Gervonta Davis is just ridiculous. I wish people would just calm down and chill out. Just let the kid progress at the levels that he needs to progress at. Gervonta Davies is one of the biggest punchers in the whole of boxing. End of. Just wait and let the kid cool your jets. Let him progress at his own level. He'll get there in the end. Why are you putting so much pressure on him, just throwing Gervonta Davis' name in his way? It's just ridiculous. So let him progress. I think he comes through this fight, I think he looks really good. And then you just want to look at the next level up. You want a gatekeeper next. A good gatekeeper, and that's where he's at. I really think he's exciting. He's a good prospect. He's getting better with each fight. He's getting more confidence as he stayed at this weight now. And, you know, I think he's going places.
Local derby on the card, Campbell Hatton against Levi Dunn, 2 kids from Manchester. Actually quite nervous about that fight because, you know, Levi Dunn's come up here yesterday and said, I always dreamed of being on here on this show. And, you know, although he's got a losing record, he's basically been slung in against prospects at late notice. He's turned up yesterday with a Manchester United shirt on, you know, and he's there to fight. Campbell last time out, they felt sorry for him because he's got a golden opportunity, but the pressure on him, like the media he did all fight week, and at the end of the 4th round, he couldn't even breathe. No. You know, so we expect to see a more disciplined performance this time.
He's got to get used to that, Ed, because his name carries weight and it carries huge significance in this city. So he's going to have to get used to that. Lovely kid, well-grounded, and, you know, he's got a really strong family-knit team behind him. He's got to draw upon them from their experiences and try and use it to his benefit. That's the most important thing for Campbell Hatton. That he stays, and, you know, asks his dad, asks his uncle, and just draws upon their experience because he's going to need it. He really is, because they came along and Ricky was the resurgence of boxing in Manchester. He saved this city literally for the boxing, and he done it. When he got there, it was like, right, I'm here now. This is what I do. But he's experiencing that kind of pressure at the start of his career. Ricky got that for the last 15
and probably
fights.
no, you know, potentially without the ability, without the amateur, you know. So
of course, without the pedigree, without that amateur. Ricky was an ABA champion. Ricky was a brilliant amateur. Ricky could really, really fight, you know, before he even went to the professional code. Campbell's been thrust into the limelight before he's actually ready. But it's all about management and opponents picking the right at the right time. It's shown with someone like Conor Benn.
Yeah, I was going to just
you can grow as the time goes on. He is the perfect example, Conor Benn. He really is. With the right fights at the right time, as long as you stay dedicated and you believe in what you're doing, you can get there. But your path won't necessarily be the same as, you know, Lomachenko's path. It doesn't mean that you're both not going to get to the top of that hill, but your path might go round the hill a couple of times and then you get to the top. Whereas Lomachenko just goes, right, fuck it, I'm running to the top. So
I was just going to draw on Conor Benn. Like, how much of a believer are you of him? Then you see, I've seen, not you, but people in boxing, you know, it's a gimmick. But as it's gone on, it's like, okay. And then last time out, it's like, wow. And then, you know, even when we were talking about Josh Kelly and these guys 2 or 3 fights ago, people were saying, calm down. And now people are talking about, you know, I mean, I think Sean Porter is 2 or 3 fights down the road. But, you know, talking about these kind of fights and levels. Are you a Conor Benn believer?
I always was. And I'll tell you the fight that I always believed in him because I could see the athletic ability in him and the likeness to his father. But the one that really got me was when he goes down on the floor. What was the fight?
Paynard, yeah.
When Paynard drops him. When he gets off the floor, he ticks so many boxes for me. I don't know what it was, or I just seen him. He gets up and he fights. I knew this kid, he's got the desire, he's got the ability, he's got the determination because he's here. He doesn't have to be here. What struck me the most was his desire to want to actually fight. When you get hurt, you ask yourself questions as a man and as a fighter. He answered them questions. So if you can answer them questions, then he's only going to get stronger from there. That Paynard fight for me was what really made me stand on and go, I know this kid's going to do well.
One of the hardest workers, and actually very similar to you in post-fight interviews. Complete lunatic, really. I mean, like, you know, he won in 80 seconds the other week and just came out like he still wanted to fight the world.
He's brilliant. I think he's absolute gold. I really do. I'm made up to see he's settled now, baby and a wife, and it's. I watch his interviews at times, and I actually mentioned in my book that about his interview and how he emotionally. How fight we get.
Tony's got a book out, by the way. I knew you'd be trying to drop that in. You know,
Shut up.
Go on.
I've got a book out. Yeah, it's called "Everyone's Got a Plan Till You Get Punched in the Face," as we all know, which is very true in life. But it doesn't matter. I mentioned Conor in it, and I said I seen him break down in front of the Sky cameras before, not last fight, the fight before, and I've been so close to that happening to me because listen, all these gang of fuckers want is a headline and a shot of an emotional version of you. That's all these want. Sky cameras want. That's all they don't care.
You listening? You listening to that?
Yeah.
They're all nodding their head.
They just want something. They want a response, an emotional response from you. So they'll bring things up like your family. I'm not here for my family, mate. I'm here to punch his fucking face in. Why are you talking about my family? Because why? Because when it takes me that many years to understand now what the fuckers want, they want an emotional response. They've tried that with me over the years. Sometimes I'd give in, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd snap back and tell them to get lost. But when I'm
glad you avoided that 7th F-bomb there.
Yeah,
it's really worth it.
When I seen him like that, I just thought I can relate to that so much. And he's a proper kid, and I really do think the world of him. I just want to see him go as far as he can possibly go. I think his talent is brilliant, but even more and more special.
If you're managing him, you know, Tony Sims, great trainer, great man, brilliant relationship. Do you want to progress, but do you also just
no? You've got to rein him in a bit. Yeah. You've got to rein him in a bit. He's going to want to fight the world. He really is. You know, as soon as I seen him come out and said, "Amir, do you want to fancy it?" and then Kel, what
do you think about that fight, though? Calm down.
I think Amir's in a no-win position, a no-win situation, and I think Conor is in a dangerous position because if he loses, they're going to go, he was all hype. And if he wins, they're going to go right, throw him to the lions. Simple. So both of them are on a double-edged sword here. I mean, it's a really good fight for the British public, but I just don't see the need for it right now. He's still learning. He's getting better at it, so he's only going to get better. Tony Sims knows the game. He's a brilliant coach. He really knows it. I've known Tony a long, long time. So he will make the right decisions. He really will, and that's going to be the hardest thing for someone like Conor Benn is listening to Tony and not going right. I can do this. I fucking know.
I think he's good at that. I think you know,
the
as much as he wants to progress, I think he realises that the reason he's in the position he's in as a fighter is because of the work he's done with Tony. They've got a great relationship, and onwards for Conor Benn. Of course, as I said, Scott Fitzgerald will kick off the broadcast earlier on in the night, and Johnny Fisher.
What's his opponent like?
Scott Fitzgerald,
because he's been out a while.
I mean, we'll tell the story of Scott Fitzgerald over time.
Yes.
But it's a story of...
He's got a good story.
You know, mental health. It's a story of addiction. Yeah. It's a story of... I mean...
He's got a great story. He really, really has.
Yeah, but I'm just pleased to see him back. You know, we've told him for this fight, listen, we'll make the fight £168. It doesn't matter. Like, you just... He's been training for 10 weeks. So it's not like, you know, but it's just, mate, you know...
Yeah.
When you need to get back on the horse, you need a date.
Yeah.
Right? You can go in the gym and you can work away, but the reality is, without a plan, it's very difficult to get motivated. So, fight here in 8 rounds. The opponent's solid, but limited. I expect him to get the stoppage, straight back in the gym. We go again in the summer. Bring your weight down back to, you know, the low 160s. Yeah. Then we go, and we're talking about the 154-pound division. Then we're talking about Fowlers, Cheesemans, Metcalf even, who put himself in.
It's nice that you're helping him and looking after him because a lot of promoters said wouldn't do that.
But Tony, look at what he done. You know, he beat Fowler in Liverpool. He beat Cheeseman. That was a very close fight. But still, and people loved him because, you know, he was a little bit crazy at the time. But also, people that come back. But also, he had a couple of good wins. And I look at it as, one, I think it's a wasted talent if we don't get him back in the ring. But also, you know, he was in a terrible place. And I didn't think he'd get back and fight again. So I'm just pleased to see him back in the ring. Johnny Fisher, our young heavyweight, is also added to the card over 4 rounds. So good opportunity for him. And I just think it's a cracking show. I mean, I know we're up here and we're here to sell it, but James Tennyson's going to be in a war. Campbell Hatton's in a great, exciting fight. Chris Eubank Jr. against Marcus Morrison will be fireworks.
Like.
Dmitry Bivol against Craig Richards is a massive chance. Katie Taylor against Natasha could be headlining any card anywhere in the world. It's the biggest fight in women's boxing.
2 main events for the price of one.
Well, Tony said it. So sort yourselves out. Press the red button. Off we go. Tony Bellew, thank you very much, my man.
Always
Talk the talk.
lad.
Hearn and Bellew, we hope you have a great weekend and, of course, enjoy a brilliant show Saturday night.